Welcome to the Legacy LaunchPod, where we help families build and scale their online business to the six-figure mark and beyond so they can break the poverty cycle, build generational wealth, and make a huge impact in the kingdom of God. It all starts right here. Welcome back to Legacy LaunchPod, where we talk about how to build a family legacy through business, and we encompass all different kinds of topics from the tactics of building $1 million business so you can move the needle, build generational wealth, all the way through to worldview, family, and beyond that. So, like I said, I'm on the move again. We are officially multitasking, walking, talking, recording something. This is what we're doing anyway. Steve and I are always walking and talking. That's how we get in our quality time, but also we just work through a lot of things. We work through a lot of business stuff and ideas and problems and solutions. So we're doing this anyway. Let's start out with, today we're going to start with a client win, a student win. I want to highlight one of my amazing students. Her name is Brittany. She has a business called the Biblical Birth School. She's a doula and does training for other people. I think both practitioners and people who just want to be educated. And she posted this on her Instagram. In December of 2023, I knew I needed more guidance to launch the full vision of the Biblical Birth School that God gave me. So I hired a Christian business coach that God showed me. I took massive action and prayed a lot. I followed the actions of those who have already been down the road I wanted to be on. I'm so thankful I did. I've had close to 5 million views on this page this year so far and over 10,000 new followers. Thank you, Leah. So I'm really proud of her. She's done an amazing job following the program and is making incredible progress. So yeah, really proud of her. Next up, we're going to have our question of the day. I just posted this on Instagram to get the question of the day from anybody who submits it. In the future, I might have a different way of doing this, like through email or something, but today, this is how we're doing it. First question: should artists operate differently in how they market and build their business for handmade items? When someone says artist, I'm assuming they mean like they paint original art or something to that effect. And then they're turning it into either a handmade product or prints or something like that. And the answer is no. You market exactly in the same way as how I teach. Now, you might not know how I teach if you're not in my program. And any one of my students, even back from Savvy Musician Academy, they will all tell you it's all principle based. And the reason I teach principles and frameworks is because those always work, no matter what the algorithm is doing, no matter what social media platform is trendy at that moment. The basic principles of building an audience, marketing and launching and doing it all over again are the same every single time. Number one is you've got to make sure that there's a demand for the thing you're creating, the product you're creating. That's the first thing. How do you know that? Well, you've got to test. And there's market research involved. Sometimes you're filling a gap, and sometimes you're creating new demand for something that people didn't even know they wanted. So that can both be the case, and you got to figure out which one you fall into. So the next thing after that is, after your market validation and testing, you've got to validate it through sales. And so that's why, I've done a couple of workshops now that now live inside my program. One is called the product validation formula, and the one after that is called the sales validation formula, because one is collecting data. You're gathering data from people, and they're signing up for a wait list and finding out, they're telling you what it is they want and if they would like the thing that you're going to offer. And the second piece of that is, let's test and see if people actually buy it, right? With very little setup. So my kids just did this with their own business. It's kind of a school project that we're hoping turns into something more than that. And they did this, like they just made their first 13 sales. They had an open close cart. That means there was only, I think, 3 or 4 days where people could buy it, and then they closed it off. And they made 13 sales. And I think, what was that, Steve, in terms of total revenue they brought in? It's over 500.
It was 18 sales.
Oh, 18 sales. I didn't hear the update. Over $800. Their first their first try at this, and I gave them very little coaching. They just followed the program. They just followed this workshop, what I told them to do. And they did not have a website. They just built a wait list. They built an email list. They built a wait list. They built a little social following, very, very small. Like we're talking like a couple hundred people. And then kept them in the loop, built anticipation, and then sent an email with a Stripe link. They didn't even send them to a website. They didn't even have a product photo. And got 18 sales. Boom. So that's my sales validation formula. It's product validation and sales validation. I like to do it all in one fell swoop because we learn so much and it's quick. Like we don't want to spend 6 months on an idea only to find out that nobody wants it and it's not great and it's not, hitting a spot in the market that is truly needed. When it comes to art, when it comes to anything, this is the process, right? So we validate it, we test it, we see if anyone buys it. And if we don't like the results, we have an option, we have a choice. We can either persevere and make it better, or we can pivot. So the choice is persevere or pivot. And I have some specific criteria in the workshops. And these are, again, inside the Legacy LaunchPad program. These are workshops that I give you like a decision matrix, right? So it's like, how do I know if I should do this? How do I know if I should pivot? How do I know? And what am I going to test if I do persevere and I do decide to continue? What are the things I should do different? What are the things I should test? So those are going to be things like price. Maybe at this point, we're going to test some photography. Could be the copy, the way we described it. Could be a number of things. There's a huge list, actually, of things that you're going to be going down the line and making some tweaks and improvements, right? The answer when it comes to art or anything else is we validate, we test, we make small pivots, and then we perfect. I use that same process. This is not just for getting something brand new off the ground. This is also the same process we use for any new product. So if I want to bring out a brand new thingamabob to my existing audience, I do actually use the same process. And I use it with a pre-order, right? So for example, if I want to do a new program, it could be a course or it could be a new candle collection. Before I go out and make the whole thing, I will maybe do up some mock-ups, or I'll have my designer do it. And we'll run a little pre-order and see if anybody buys it. So this is a little bit more of an advanced way, but I love the pre-order model. And do you know why I love it so much? It's low risk. And I know so many of you are risk averse. You've been burned, or you just don't have a lot of capital to burn. You can't really afford to burn it. I get it. The idea here is to validate and test, and we're always doing that. So the better and better you get at the pre-order model, it becomes not just an art, but a science. And I would argue that I know this model so well that I could execute it in a coma. It's the same thing as a Kickstarter. It's the same thing as, it's just a market validation test. But I like show me the money, because a test is not a real test until someone gives you a credit card. That's the real test. So I hope that answers your question. And there was another one. I might as well do the second one that came in because it came in almost at the exact same time. All right, the second question came in, which is, how do you build a seed audience? And I'm going to give you a very high-level answer here because a podcast is not the place for me to get into tutorials and whatnot. And I'm going to say something from the outset as well, which is you're going to get some really good content here. But one thing I will not do is go into great detail in that which I have already done inside my program, Legacy LaunchPad, that people have invested heavily into. I'm going to be a bit meta here. My clients sometimes ask me, people who have courses, coaching, and other things, how much information do I give away? I'm going to practice what I preach right here, which is that publicly you give the why and a little bit of how, but mostly the why. The how is for the program. The how is the tutorials. The how is the step-by-step. The how is the implementation. And that's the whole purpose of coaching and a program. So a seed audience. I'm glad that you recognize that you need a seed audience. This is the first and biggest step that I think most people completely miss. It's the one thing that my kids just did to make 18 sales. A seed audience simply means a very, very small audience who is highly interested in what you are about to offer because they've indicated that one way or another. And these people have raised their hand and said, whenever the thing is ready that you're making, I will be among the first to purchase it, or I'm very interested in purchasing it. So seed audience is one of the most lucrative audiences you can ever have. And many times people are really excited to be part of a seed audience, and it's nothing you should ever be embarrassed of. They're excited to be part of a seed audience because they get to feel like they're part of something. Like they've got a front row seat, or they've got a backstage pass. That's probably even a better analogy. A backstage pass to something cool and exciting. People love that. And these are your early adopters. The early adopters are the same type of people who in the tech world would line up around the block to get the latest iPhone, even if it has a bunch of glitches and bugs and crashing problems. They don't really care. They just love that it's new and they're excited. These are the early adopters that we're seeking, and these are part of our seed audience. And the seed audience is also, I find they're the most gracious. They're very understanding. They understand if you bring them along and let them see behind the scenes, they understand that you're a brand new startup and that you're testing things. And so these people are also incredible to turn into a focus group, or you can heavily survey them and you can ask them all the questions and just harvest a complete data gold mine from them. And in my program, I actually give you my deep dive surveys that I have used in all my 7-figure businesses. So as far as the how you build a seed audience, you can do it 2 ways, organic or paid. The organic way is to build up brand new social media accounts, or your existing accounts are fine if it's the same business and you're just rebranding or giving it a new go. And you start sharing behind the scenes with people, right? And this is what I'm doing. Follow me behind the scenes. You got to be vulnerable, got to show your face. And the second way is paid. And so I was like an angel investor, you could call it, into my kids' business. I gave them $500 to build their seed audience through a paid ad. I showed my son how to set it up, and we used a meta ad, a specific kind of ad. And it was interesting because at first he launched it and they just had one image, one photo, and I can't remember the cost. It was well over $1. It was like $1.50 or $2. I said, no, that's not good. That's not the right price. And the reason it's that price is because of the type of content you need to make video. So we talked about it and the kids brainstormed and they made a bunch of new videos. They added those videos, and sure enough, the price went all the way down to 75 cents per lead per email, which is fantastic, especially considering that they were not running a lead magnet like, oh, get this free thing, enter your email to get, and we'll give you something. There was no incentive. The only reason people signed up is because it was a wait list. It was a coming soon ad. Coming soon. This thing that we might launch, that might not launch. But if you want to be part of it, join the thing for nothing, and you get nothing in return. So to me, that was actually an incredible price and shows that the strategy really, really works. So they built their email list to 800 people before they launched. And then when they launched, they got those 18 sales in the 4 days or however long they were open. It's organic or it's paid, one of the two. And of course, I'm teaching all those strategies. These are tutorial type of lessons. I can't just show you on a podcast. And so that's how you do it. And then of course, there's a whole lot that matters. After you add these people to your list, you don't just leave them alone. You've got to nurture them. You've got to build anticipation. You've got to help them fall in love with your brand in the making. And that's all part of the art and the science. Let's shift now to what our current focus is for this week in our business. I have conversations every single day in my Instagram DMs, and some of them are really interesting. And I notice a lot of patterns with people in terms of their mindset. This is number one reason why people get stuck. And there are some really, really common ones. And I've just noticed how much people struggle with risk. Like they're very, very risk averse. And I just think to myself, if you're this risk averse, you really shouldn't choose the path of entrepreneurship, because that's the actual literal definition of entrepreneur. If you look it up on the dictionary, the definition of an entrepreneur is one who's willing to take a financial risk. Like that's in the definition. And I just keep thinking, why all these people, they say they want to be a business owner, they want to be an entrepreneur, but they don't want any risk at all. What do you say about that?
It's like they expect, that they can gain all the reward without any of the risk, which is like saying, I want to invest into this real estate thing, but without putting any money into it, any time into it, and I want the reward at the end. Well, that's not going to work. You literally put nothing into it. So you can expect nothing out of it.
So what
Right.
about people who are at the beginning? They don't have a lot of disposable income. And
Right.
so there's a fear of losing.
Yeah.
Now
So
that brings me back to the parable of the talents, actually.
totally. And that actually brings up the point where you might not have money at the moment, right? So what do you have? You either have time or you have money or you have both. The objective is to have both. But in the beginning, you probably only have one or the other, right? When you're starting a new thing. So what is it? If you have the money, then you can pay somebody to do it for you. If you don't have the money, you have the time, then you do it. You put the time in and you build it. That's your investment. But you have to be 100% committed, like we've talked about before, committed to the outcome where there's like nothing is going to stop you. This is something that's happening and there's no two ways about it. So 100% committed. And you put in the time, which also means that in putting in the time, you're going to invest into yourself however you can with whatever resources you have available to you, which may be that you find yourself a mentor or whatever the case is, a course or a book, and you treat that thing as if you paid $1 million for it and you execute and take action and do every single thing that you possibly can. And along the way, you don't throw your hands up in the air and say, I failed if something doesn't work, so therefore I'll just give up. You say, well, that didn't work. Why didn't that work? And what can I learn from it? And what can I do differently the next time so that hopefully it'll do better? And you keep doing that. The only difference between failure and success is the people who have success were willing to fail 100 times before having one success.
100%.
So you have to be willing to do that.
Yeah, and if you think about the parable of the talent and the fear of loss, who was the one who was condemned by the master? It was the man who had fear that he was going to lose the money he had been given. So he buried it because he thought, well, it's better to bury it than to lose it. And so his fear of risk actually got him condemned in the end because the master's like, no, you need to go and make an ROI on this. I'm entrusting you. I've given you resources and tools, and your job is to make an ROI. And in this case, it was an actual financial ROI, not a figurative ROI, financial. And so I think we have to be really cautious and put our fears in check that it's just money, it's just stuff. Now, I'm not talking like if the money you have is going to pay your mortgage and buy food. And I'm not talking about gambling here, right? Let's not be foolish. So that's why I actually turn away a lot of people from my program. And in the next episode, I want to talk about a big mistake I made in letting people into the program who couldn't actually afford it. And that did not work out well at all. But all these people, they wanted to make it work, but they had no business joining to begin with because they didn't actually have the finances to begin with. They couldn't afford it to begin with. And so I'm not suggesting that you spend your grocery money on a program. We don't want to do that. But you can sell stuff in your garage. That's what I did. People always ask me, so you said at the beginning of your story, you guys were in a position where sometimes you had to choose between groceries and gas or paying taxes and groceries. Yes, that is 100% true. We had to pick and choose. So how did I ever afford the very beginning courses and programs that I took to be able to do that? And the first thing is I devoured anything free I could get, just like you guys probably have done. But after a while, you realize that's not enough. It doesn't go deep enough. It's too surface level. And I need to know the how. I need to know the how. I need someone to show me and I'll be able to do it. And so what did I do? I actually sold stuff. I sold things on eBay and I took stuff from my closet in my garage, sold it on eBay. And that's how I came up with the cash to get my very first program that showed me the how. And that was the catalyst for me. It was $2,000. And that was $2,000 we didn't have.
There you go.
And I actually took like a dress that I had made and It was on like one of my album covers, and I sold it, and a whole bunch of things. And it took me a little while to get it. Where there's a will, there's a way. That saying will always be true. People, when they say they don't have the money, I don't believe them, because people can find it.
Yeah.
They can find it. I found it. People who want something bad enough can do it.
What they're really saying is, I don't have a will to make it possible. That's what they're really saying.
They're
And
saying,
they don't even know it, though, right?
yeah, and they're saying, I don't have the desire to find resources. Because it's not always about necessarily cash in hand, but finding resources means sometimes other ways. The real entrepreneur is creative. We're creative in our problem solving. We're creative in finding the money. We're creative. This is why I think homeschool families are so positioned for success, is because longtime homeschoolers know exactly what I mean. We're resourceful. We're the kind of people that can make an incredible meal when there's only a few ingredients in the pantry, and we find a way to make it delicious.
Yeah.
Okay, these are the people who know how to find resources or be creative and come up with it somehow. That's why my program isn't free, by the way, because you have to have skin in the game, and it should feel like an ouch. If it's not an ouch, you're not going to show up. That is 100%. I'm telling you, we pay 6 figures a year right now for our advisory team, and it's a big ouch.
Multiple 6 figures
Multiple
a year.
I said I downplayed it a bit.
Multiple 6 figures a year. Yeah.
And yeah, it's definitely like, and I will tell you, our advisors do not make us feel nice. I posted something on my Instagram stories the other day about how, you know what, I got off a really difficult call with one of our advisors because I was being challenged at a level that was so uncomfortable, and I cried and I was kind of mad. And then I realized, you know what? Oh, he did nothing really wrong, but this is a challenging growth period for us, and he is challenging me on every single level, and it's so uncomfortable. And that's how you know you have a good coach, if they won't let you off the hook.
Yeah. A good coach will grab your hand and pull you up.
Yeah, you might even be kicking and screaming,
to
but
their level. They're attempting to pull you up to their level, not drag them down to your level, right? You don't want to, their objective is not to come down to your level, but for you to come up to their level, which obviously should be obvious, is going to be a little painful. If you think about the analogy of building muscle, for instance, right? You go to the gym, lift some weights, you have some pain the next day or two, and your muscles grow. And then you go back and you lift heavier weight, which causes more discomfort. And eventually you're lifting 2 or 3 or 4 times as much weight as you started with, right? Because you were able to move through that challenge and pain. No pain, no gain. So don't expect the wisdom of others who have gone before you to be free.
all right, guys, well, that's what I've got for you this time. I know some of the stuff we say is not going to be easy to hear, and that's why it needs to be said, and that's why you need to hear it, because I don't think you're going to find this level of honesty and candidness from just anyone. And people who truly do care about you. We care about your families. We care about your ability to build a legacy. That's the whole point behind this podcast. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in today. Don't leave just yet. I've got 2 things. Number 1, if you enjoyed this content, if this was of any value to you, please leave me a review and share with a friend. This content is 100% free, so that's like leaving me a tip, and it's going to encourage us to keep making it. Number 2, if it's your desire to build your own family legacy and you want some help, send me a DM on Instagram with the word podcast, and I've got something special for you. Again, DM me with the word podcast at Real Leah McHenry on Instagram. We'll see you next time.